message came from the edge of known space, broadcast on frequencies that had been silent for centuries. Ambassador Park Yoon-soo sat in her office on Terra Command, listening to the transmission with growing excitement and disbelief. "People of Earth," the voice said in broken but understandable human language. "We are the Zephyrians. We heard of your victory against the Devourers. We wish to speak." Within hours, more messages arrived. The Altani, the Christek, the Vorthan Republic, species that had hidden in the darkness for generations, were emerging, drawn by news of humanity's battles against the Kethvar. "How many are there?" Admiral Kim asked as he reviewed the communication logs. 47 different species so far," Park replied. "All survivors of Kethvar attacks. Some have been hiding for hundreds of years. The first alien ship to reach human space was a Zephyrian scout vessel. It looked like a crystal butterfly, beautiful and fragile. When it docked with the space station New Seoul, Captain Park So-jin was there to meet the first living aliens humans had ever seen. The Zephyrian ambassador was tall and thin, with silver skin and large purple eyes. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music. "For 300 years, my people have hidden in dead systems, afraid to use our radios, afraid to light our cities," the alien said. "The Devourers taught us that the galaxy belonged to them. But you fought them and won." How Captain Park smiled. "We got angry. Within weeks, the secret alliance was formed. Alien engineers shared technology that humanity had never imagined. The Christek provided shield generators that could stop Kethvar acid weapons. The Altani brought stealth technology that made human ships invisible even at close range. The Vorthan gave them star charts showing Kethvar positions throughout the galaxy. But the most valuable gift came from a species called the Remnants, survivors of the first race the Kethvar had ever attacked, 10,000 years ago. "We remember everything," their leader told Admiral Ryu. "Every ship design, every weapon, every tactic. We have waited 10 millennia for someone strong enough to help us get revenge." The Remnants' knowledge transformed human battle plans. They knew exactly how the Kethvar would respond to different attacks, which bioships were the most dangerous, and where the enemy command structure was weakest. "The Overmind controls everything," explained the Remnant called Ancient Memory. "It is a massive bioship at the center of their fleet. Kill the Overmind and the others become mindless beasts." Admiral Ryu studied the tactical displays with new understanding. The Kethvar weren't just a fleet. They were a single organism with the Overmind as its brain. Cut off the head, and the body would die. "How do we get close enough to the Overmind?" he asked. "You don't," Ancient Memory replied. "It is protected by layers of guardianships. Nothing has ever reached it. Then we'll be the first." The plan for Operation Thunderstrike took shape over several weeks. Instead of one massive assault, humanity would attack the Kethvar from multiple directions at once. General Kang Soo-hyun would lead ground forces to liberate planets the aliens had captured. Fleet Captain Moon Jae-min would command orbital bombardment fleets to destroy Kethvar breeding facilities. And Admiral Ryu would take the main fleet directly to Kethmore Prime, the alien capital world. "This is our chance," Ryu told the assembled commanders. "The Kethvar main fleet is gathered at their homeworld for some kind of ceremony. All their ships in one place. We'll never get a better opportunity." The human armada had grown to 50,000 ships. Along with their alien allies, they commanded the largest space force in galactic history, but even that might not be enough. The Kethvar had 3,000 of their largest bioships protecting their homeworld. Lieutenant Seo Da-un was now Squadron Commander Seo, leading 200 fighters into the most dangerous battle humanity had ever faced. Her pilots came from every human colony and several alien species. They had trained together for months, learning to fight as one unit. "Remember," she told them over the communication system, "the Overmind is our target. Everything else is just in the way." The journey to Kethmore Prime took 2 weeks. The combined fleet moved through hyperspace like a steel river, carrying the hopes and anger of 100 species. When they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the enemy system, what they saw took their breath away. The Kethvar homeworld was covered in massive biostructures that pulsed with sickly light. Organic space stations orbited the planet like diseased moons, and everywhere, as far as sensors could reach, were enemy ships. "My God," whispered Commander Yang from his battlecruiser. "There are so many of them." "Count doesn't matter," Admiral Ryu replied firmly. "Quality over quantity. Every one of our ships is worth 10 of theirs." The battle for Kethmore Prime began at dawn, ship time. The human armada struck like a hammer, driving deep into the enemy formation. Fighter squadrons swarmed over the bioships like angry wasps. Capital ships exchanged devastating fire at point-blank range. Vice Admiral Lee Young-ho commanded the left flank, his ships carving through enemy defenses with surgical precision. His quantum disruptors tore apart bioships faster than they could regenerate. "Push forward," he commanded. "Don't give them time to adapt." But the Kethvar were fighting differently now. Instead of acting like individual hunters, they were working together, forming complex patterns that confused human targeting systems. "They're learning," reported his tactical officer. "They're copying our formations." "Then we'll teach them something new," Lee replied. "All ships implement Pattern Omega-7. Pattern Omega-7 was something the Kethvar had never seen, a human battle formation based on ancient Earth naval tactics. The human ships formed a wall of overlapping fire that nothing could penetrate. Meanwhile, Major Im So-young was leading her Marines through the corridors of a captured Kethvar command ship. The interior was like a nightmare. Walls that pulsed like living flesh, floors that bled when stepped on, and alien creatures that screamed when they died. "Keep moving," she shouted to her troops. "The bridge is just ahead." The Marines had trained for this, fighting inside living ships where every surface might be an enemy. They used flame weapons and acid charges to burn their way through biological barriers. When they reached the command center, they found something that made even veteran soldiers sick. The ship's bridge was grown around the remains of captured aliens from dozens of species. Living beings had been turned into ship components, their minds enslaved to serve the Kethvar. "Sir," called Sergeant Chohan Wu, "there are still some alive. Should we try to free them?" Im looked at the tortured aliens trapped in the living walls. Some had been there for centuries, their bodies twisted into unnatural shapes. The kindest thing she could do was end their suffering. "Burn it all," she ordered quietly. "Burn every inch of this horror." The battle raged for 72 hours. Human ships fought at ranges so close that their hulls almost touched the enemy bioships. Fighters dueled among the wreckage of destroyed vessels. The space around Kethmar Prime became a graveyard of twisted metal and organic debris. Admiral Ryu watched the tactical display from his flagship, tracking the slow progress toward their ultimate target. The Overmind was still protected by its guardian ships, but the defenses were weakening. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported his communications officer. "It's from the Overmind itself. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was ancient and filled with hate. "Humans, you dare to challenge us? We have consumed 1,000 species. You will be just another meal." "We're different," Ryu replied calmly. "We don't just roll over and die. We fight back. Your resistance is meaningless. We are eternal. We are inevitable." "No," Ryu said, his voice hard as steel. "You're just bullies who never learned to fight real warriors. Today that ends." The final assault began when Fleet Captain John Minho's ships broke through the last line of Guardian bioships. His dreadnoughts opened fire on the Overmind with everything they had: quantum disruptors, plasma cannons, nuclear torpedoes, and experimental weapons that turned living tissue into energy. The Overmind was massive, over 10 kilometers long and shaped like a grotesque brain. As the human weapons hit it, the creature began to scream. The sound was broadcast on every frequency, a wail of pain and rage that had never been heard before. "Keep firing," John commanded. "Don't stop until it's dead." The death of the Overmind sent shockwaves through the entire Kethvar fleet. Without the central intelligence to guide them, the bioships began attacking each other in confusion. Some fled into hyperspace. Others simply went dormant and drifted in space like dead whales. When the battle was over, the Kethvar Dominion had ceased to exist. Their homeworld was a burning ruin. Their fleets were scattered or destroyed. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years was finally extinct, but victory had come at a terrible cost. 7,000 human ships had been lost. 50,000 soldiers and crew members would never see Earth again. The price of justice had been paid in blood. Admiral Ryu stood on his bridge looking at the wreckage field that had once been the enemy capital. Around him, his surviving ships began the long journey home. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "what do we do now?" Captain Hong Jin-A checked her instruments one more time. The stealth destroyer Silent Thunder was invisible to most sensors, floating quietly in the shadow of an asteroid. She and her crew had been watching the Kethvar harvesting fleet for 3 days, learning their patterns and weaknesses. "They're like locusts," whispered Lieutenant Park Min-woo, her second in command. "Look how they strip everything away." Through the main view screen, they could see the alien fleet at work. Massive bioships, each one looking like a cross between a whale and a spider, were draining the oceans of the planet below. Smaller craft swarmed around the dead world like flies, collecting every piece of organic matter they could find. "Count again," Hong ordered. "I want exact numbers." 47 major vessels, maybe 200 smaller ones, reported the sensor officer. "No escorts, no guards. They think they're safe out here." Hong smiled coldly. The Kethvar had been hunting helpless prey for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be hunted. That was about to change. "Send the signal," she commanded. "Tell Admiral Ryu we found them. 20 light years away." Admiral Ryu Sang-ho received the message aboard his flagship, the massive dreadnought Earth's Fury. Around him in space floated the core of the human Armada, 5,000 of humanity's best warships, ready for their first real battle. Signal from Captain Hong. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "enemy fleet located at coordinates 847 Alpha. No defensive formations. They're completely exposed." Ryu studied the tactical display. The Kethvar were doing exactly what they had done for thousands of years, consuming a dead world without any thought of danger. They had never needed to worry about counterattacks before. "Commander Yang, take Battle Group 7 and move to intercept coordinates. Use the asteroid field for cover," Ryu ordered. Commander Yang Tai-ho acknowledged from his battle cruiser Iron Thunder. His group of 200 ships began moving toward the target system, their engines glowing blue in the darkness. "All ships, this is Admiral Ryu," came the voice over the fleet communication system. "Today we fight our first battle against the species that has terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years. Remember the Villani. Remember every species that died because no one could help them. Today we become their justice." The human Armada moved like a well-trained machine. Months of practice and preparation showed as the ships fell into perfect attack formations. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships. Destroyers took positions to cut off escape routes. The big dreadnoughts powered up their main weapons. Lieutenant Seo Da-yoon sat in the cockpit of her fighter Starhawk, watching her instruments. She was part of Fighter Squadron Delta, assigned to attack the smaller Kethvar vessels. Her hands were steady on the controls, but her heart was beating fast. "All pilots, this is Wing Commander Lee," came the voice in her helmet. "Remember your training. These bioships can heal themselves if you don't hit them hard enough. Go for the nerve centers, the bright spots near the front. Kill the brain and the body dies." "Understood, sir," Da-won replied along with the other pilots. The first attack came without warning. Commander Yang's battle group dropped out of hyperspace right in the middle of the Kethvar fleet. The aliens were completely surprised. For several precious seconds, they just floated there, trying to understand what was happening. Yang didn't waste those seconds. "All ships, open fire. Hit everything that moves." The space around the dead planet lit up with weapons fire. Human plasma cannons, laser beams, and the new quantum disruptors struck the bioships like lightning. The aliens' living hulls began to bubble and dissolve where the weapons hit them, but the Kethvar were not helpless. Once they recovered from their surprise, they began to fight back. Their weapons were strange. Streams of acid that could eat through metal and biological torpedoes that moved like living creatures. "Evasive maneuvers," Yang shouted as acid streams barely missed his ship. "Don't let them get a clean shot." The battle became a deadly dance. Human ships used their speed and maneuverability to avoid the alien weapons while striking at weak points. The Kethvar tried to use their size and strength to overwhelm the smaller human vessels. Lieutenant Da-un dove her fighter toward a medium-sized bioship that looked like a giant jellyfish. Its surface was covered with writhing tentacles that were trying to grab her fighter. "Target locked," she said to herself, pressing the firing button. Her quantum disruptor beam hit the creature's nerve center and the entire ship convulsed and went still. "Confirmed kill," reported her wingman, Lieutenant Nam Kichul. "That thing just died." All around the battlefield, human fighters were proving that the new weapons worked. The quantum disruptors were tearing apart the Kethvar bioships faster than they could heal themselves. But the aliens were learning too. The larger bioships began working together, creating fields of acid rain that forced the human fighters to keep their distance. "This is Fleet Captain John Minho," came a new voice over the communication system. "Battle Group 12 is in position behind the enemy. Beginning flanking attack. The Kethavar suddenly found themselves caught between two human forces. Captain Jian's ships attacked from behind while Commander Yang continued his assault from the front. The aliens tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. "Don't let any of them escape," Admiral Ryu ordered from his command ship. "If even one gets away, they'll warn the main fleet." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the space around the dead planet was filled with the wreckage of Kethavar bioships. Pieces of organic material floated like a grotesque sea. Not a single alien vessel had survived. The human armada had won its first victory, but the cost was not small. 12 human ships had been destroyed and another 30 were damaged. 215 human lives had been lost. Commander Yang stood on the bridge of his ship looking at the casualty reports. His face was grim. 200 people dead to kill a harvesting fleet. How many will die when we face their main force? "As many as it takes," replied his weapons officer, Commander Kim Suho. "The Kethavar have killed trillions. 200 is a small price to pay for justice." Captain Hong's stealth ship approached the wreckage field, scanning for anything useful. Her sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. "Admiral Ryu, you need to see this," she transmitted. "What did you find, Captain?" "There are remains from other species in these bioships. Hundreds of different types. The Kethavar don't just kill their enemies. They incorporate them into their ships. They make the dead into weapons." The horror of this discovery spread through the human fleet. The Kethavar were not just genocidal. They were desecrators, turning their victims into tools of further destruction. Admiral Ryu's voice came over the fleet communication system, cold and hard. "All ships prepare for the next phase. We're going to hunt down every Kethavar ship in this sector. No mercy, no prisoners. They showed no mercy to the species they consumed, and we will show them none." The news of humanity's first victory spread quickly through human space. On Earth, in the colonies, and on ships throughout the fleet, people celebrated. But the celebration was mixed with determination. This was only the beginning. In the intelligence centers, analysts studied the wreckage from the battle. They learned that the Kethavar had no concept of individual ships working together. Each bioship was a separate creature that followed basic instincts. They had never developed real tactics because they had never needed them. "They're hunters, not warriors," Chief Intelligence Officer Bei Jinwoo reported to the War Council. "They know how to kill helpless prey, but they don't know how to fight an organized enemy." This was humanity's advantage. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other, developing tactics and strategies, learning how to work together in battle. The Kethavar had spent 10,000 years bullying the weak. Fleet Captain John Minho was already planning the next attack. His ships were hunting Kethavar scouts in the outer systems, making sure no word of humanity's existence reached the main alien fleet. "We need to keep hitting them," he told his officers. "Small fleets, harvesting groups, scouts. We kill them all before they know we exist." The plan was working. Over the next month, human strike forces destroyed 17 more Kethavar fleets. Each victory taught them more about their enemy and gave them more confidence. But Admiral Ryu knew this was just the warm-up. The real battle would come when they faced the main Kethavar Armada, 3,000 bioships that had been moving toward human space for over a year. How long before they reached the outer colonies? He asked his tactical officer. 6 months, sir. Maybe 7 if we're lucky. Then we don't wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them. The hunter had become the hunted. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Kethavar were the prey. The shipyards around Earth had never been so busy. Director Shin Woo-jin stood on the observation deck of the main orbital facility, watching hundreds of workers in spacesuits crawling over the skeleton of a new warship. Sparks flew from welding torches and giant robot arms moved massive steel plates into position. The peaceful sound of construction had been replaced by the urgent noise of war preparation. "How many ships will be ready this month?" asked Lee Hai-jin, joining Shin at the window. The manager of the Korean lunar shipyards looked tired. She had been working 18-hour days for 6 months, 47 from Earth facilities. "How about the moon yards?" Shin replied, not taking her eyes off the construction. 32. "But we're getting faster. Next month should be 50. Shin nodded. "The Mars colonies just sent us another 1,000 workers. Every person in the solar system who knows how to hold a wrench is building warships now." It was true. The mobilization of humanity had been amazing to watch. When Admiral Kim announced that aliens were coming to destroy Earth, people didn't panic. They didn't run away. Instead, they rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Farmers became factory workers. Teachers became engineers. Artists became soldiers. Every human colony contributed whatever they could. Mars sent raw materials and workers. Europa's ice miners retrofitted their drilling ships with weapons. The asteroid belt workers turned their ore haulers into ammunition carriers. In the main construction bay, engineer Ko Min-sik was testing his latest weapon design. The quantum disruptor looked like a normal laser cannon, but it was anything but normal. When he fired it at a test target made of Volani biometal, the target simply fell apart at the atomic level. "How does it work?" asked Dr. Lim Subin, watching the demonstration. "It breaks the bonds that hold living tissue together," Ko explained. "The Kethavar ships are grown, not built. This weapon should tear them apart from the inside." "What about range and power requirements?" "Range is good, about the same as our regular plasma cannons. Power, well, it uses a lot of energy. Each shot drains about 10% of a ship's reactor." Subin frowned. "That means 10 shots and you're out of power. I'm working on that. But even 10 shots should be enough to kill a Kethavar bioship." Across the solar system, Commander An Ji-hoon was training the new Marine units. The training facility on Mars had been expanded 5 times in 6 months. Where once there had been a small base for peacekeeping forces, now there was a massive military complex. "Move faster," An shouted at a group of recruits practicing zero-gravity combat. "The Kethavar won't wait for you to get comfortable." The recruits were struggling. Most of them had never been in a real fight before, but they were learning quickly. Fear was a powerful teacher. Lieutenant Seo Da-un was one of the best new pilots. She had been flying cargo ships between the colonies when the war started. Now she was learning to fly the new fighter craft that would escort the big warships. "The enemy ships are fast and they can change direction quickly," her instructor told the pilot class. "But they're still living creatures. They can be hurt, they can be confused, and they can be killed. Your job is to get close enough to do damage and fast enough to get away alive." Da-un raised her hand. "How big are their ships?" "The biggest ones are about 3 kilometers long. The smallest fighters are about the size of our destroyers." The class was quiet. Even the smallest enemy ships were bigger than most human warships. "I know what you're thinking," the instructor continued. "How can we fight something that big?" The answer is simple. We don't fight fair. We use tactics they've never seen before. We hit them where they don't expect it. And we never, ever give up. On Earth, Admiral Ryu Sang-ho was studying the tactical displays in the new War Command Center. He had been promoted to lead the human Armada, the largest fleet in human history. The responsibility was enormous, but Ryu was ready for it. "Sir, the latest intelligence report from Captain Park's scouting mission," said his aide, handing him a data pad. Ryu read the report and his face became grim. Captain Park had gotten close to the Kethavar fleet, close enough to see what they were really dealing with. The enemy had over 3,000 ships, ranging from fighters to massive dreadnoughts that looked like giant sea creatures. They moved through space like a swarm of predators, consuming everything in their path. "Any weaknesses?" Ryu asked. "Captain Park thinks they communicate through biological signals. If we can jam those signals, we might be able to confuse them." "Good. Add signal jammers to all our ships." "What else?" "They seem to avoid fighting in asteroid fields. Probably because the rocks damage their biohulls." Ryu smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then we'll fight them in asteroid fields." The war preparations were changing human society in ways no one had expected. The separate colonies that had operated independently for decades were now working together like a single organism. Earth sent technology and leadership. Mars provided materials and manufacturing. The outer colonies contributed workers and ideas. But the biggest change was in the people themselves. Humans who had lived peaceful lives were discovering they had the capacity for terrible violence when their families were threatened. The gentle species that had explored the stars was revealing another side of its nature. Captain Hong Jin-ae was an example of this transformation. 6 months ago, she had been a civilian pilot carrying passengers between star systems. Now she commanded a stealth destroyer equipped with experimental cloaking technology and enough firepower to level a city. "The first rule of fighting the Kethavar," she told her crew, "is that they're not just our enemies. They're everyone's enemies. Every species they've killed is counting on us to stop them." Her crew nodded. They understood. This wasn't just about human survival. This was about justice for the Volani and all the other species that had died screaming into the void. In the intelligence centers, analysts worked around the clock to understand the enemy. Chief Intelligence Officer Bei Jin-woo had assembled teams of experts to study every piece of information about the HFY. They've been moving across the galaxy for at least 10,000 years, he reported to Admiral Kim. Always the same pattern. They arrive, they consume everything living, they move on. No communication, no negotiation, no mercy. How many species have they destroyed? Based on the wreckage patterns we found, probably over 1,000. Maybe more. Kim felt a cold anger growing in his chest. 1,000 species. Billions or trillions of individuals, all dead because of one genocidal empire. Any species ever fought them off? Not that we can find. Some put up good fights, lasted months or even years, but they all died in the end. Then we'll be the first. The transformation of humanity continued. Peaceful exploration ships were being fitted with armor and weapons. Luxury cruise liners became troop transports. Even small private yachts were converted into reconnaissance craft. The most impressive sight was the fleet assembly point near Jupiter. Hundreds of warships floated in formation, their hulls gleaming with fresh paint and new weapons. They looked deadly and beautiful, like sharks made of metal and energy. Commander Yang Tai-ho walked through the corridors of his new battlecruiser, the Iron Thunder. His crew was a mix of professional military officers and civilian volunteers. They came from every human colony and every background, but they all shared the same determination. "Sir, all systems check out," reported his weapons officer. "We're ready for combat," Yang nodded. "Signal the fleet. The human armada is ready to launch." Across human space, 50,000 warships received the same message. The largest military force in galactic history was ready to move. They had trained for months, prepared for every possible situation, and armed themselves with weapons designed to kill gods. But most importantly, they had something their enemy had never faced before. They had human anger, focused and refined into a weapon more dangerous than any technology. The HFY had spent 10,000 years hunting helpless prey. Now the prey was coming to hunt them. The meeting room on Terra Command was filled with the most important people in human space. Admiral Kim Dong-ho sat at the head of the long metal table, looking at faces he had known for decades. These men and women had kept humanity safe and peaceful for 200 years. Now they faced a problem none of them had ever imagined. General Oh Byung-soo was the first to speak. He was a big man with thick arms and a loud voice. "Admiral, with respect, we only have the word of some aliens we've never met. How do we know this isn't some kind of trick?" Fleet Commander Yoon Hae-rin shook her head. "What kind of trick, General? Someone pretending their entire species is dead? That makes no sense. Maybe they want us to attack this HFY dominion for them. Maybe this is their war, not ours," Oh replied. Chief Intelligence Officer Bei Jin-woo opened a folder on his tablet. "I've been studying the star charts the Volani sent us. The HFY fleet is real and it's massive. Our deep space sensors picked up energy signatures moving through the Beta Quadrant. Whatever destroyed the Volani is heading toward inhabited systems." Dr. Lim Soo-bin, Earth's top expert on alien life, stood up from her chair. She was small and quiet, but when she spoke, everyone listened. 3 days ago, we found debris from the Volani homeworld. I've been studying the samples." She pressed a button and holographic images appeared above the table. The images showed strange, beautiful creatures with blue skin and large eyes. They looked peaceful and intelligent. The Volani were advanced. Their technology was equal to ours, maybe better in some areas. "But look at this," Subin said, changing the image. Now they saw burned pieces of metal and what looked like dried blood. Whatever killed them didn't just destroy their ships. It consumed them. "What do you mean, consumed?" Admiral Kim asked. "The biological matter has been harvested, stripped away completely. The HFY don't just kill their enemies. They eat them." The room became very quiet. Several people looked sick. "There's more," Subin continued. "We found traces of other species in the debris. The Volani weren't the first. The HFY have been doing this for a long time, moving from system to system, consuming everything alive." Captain Park So-jin, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "The Volani's last message said the HFY were coming for us next. How long do we have?" Bei Jin-woo looked at his calculations. "Based on their movement speed, they'll reach the outer colonies in 18 months. Earth in 2 years. That's not much time to prepare," Yoon Hae-rin said. "Prepare for what?" General Oh asked. "We haven't fought a real war in generations. Our ships are built for exploration and trade, not combat." Admiral Kim stood up slowly. He had been thinking about this problem since Park's first report. "We have 2 choices. We can run. Try to evacuate as many people as possible to distant colonies. Or we can fight. Fight with what? O asked. We have maybe 500 military ships in the entire fleet. The intelligence report says the Kethvar have thousands. Then we build more ships, Kim said simply. Commander An Ji-hun, who led the Marines, laughed bitterly. Admiral, building warships takes years. We don't have years. Dr. Lim Subin cleared her throat. Actually, we might have an advantage. I've been studying the Villani technology in the debris. Their weapons were designed to work with biological targets. If we can reverse engineer them, you want to build weapons that eat aliens? General O asked. Not eat, disrupt. The Kethvar ships are grown, not built. They're living creatures. We can design weapons that attack their biological systems. Kim looked around the table. Director Shin Woo-jin, how fast can we convert our civilian shipyards to military production? Shin was in charge of Earth's industrial systems. She was young for such an important job, but she was the smartest engineer on the planet. If we work around the clock and use every shipyard in the system, 6 months to retool everything. We could start producing warships in 8 months. The Korean lunar shipyards can help, said Lee Hae-jin, who ran the moon factories. We have the biggest construction facilities outside Earth. Give me the blueprints and I can build whatever you need. Engineer Ko Min-sik raised his hand. I can have prototype weapons ready in 3 months. If Dr. Subin is right about the biological angle, I have some ideas that might work. Admiral Kim nodded. Good. But ships and weapons aren't enough. We need trained crews. Commander An, how many Marines do we have? About 10,000 across all colonies. But they're used to keeping peace, not fighting wars. Train more. Train everyone who's willing to fight. This isn't going to be a small conflict. Fleet Commander Yoon looked worried. Admiral, even if we can build enough ships, we'll still be outnumbered. The Kethvar have been conquering the galaxy for who knows how long. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are, Kim replied. Captain Park, I want you to take a scouting mission. Get close enough to observe the Kethvar fleet, but don't engage. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Park nodded. Yes, sir. I'll take my best crew. General O, start mobilizing the planetary defense forces. Every world needs to be ready to fight. What about evacuation plans? O asked. Kim's face became hard. There won't be any evacuation. If we run, the Kethvar will just follow us. This ends here one way or another. Dr. Subin looked at the holographic images of the dead Villani. Admiral, there's something else. The Villani weren't the only species that tried to warn others. I found fragments of similar distress calls in their data. Dozens of different languages, all saying the same thing. They're coming. Stop them before they reach you. How many species have they destroyed? Yoon asked quietly. I don't know. Maybe hundreds. Maybe thousands. The Kethvar have been crossing the galaxy for a very long time. The room was silent as everyone thought about this. Hundreds of species, each one probably thinking they were alone, each one dying without anyone to help them. Admiral Kim looked at each person around the table. The Villani asked us to stop the Kethvar before they reached us. They're counting on us to succeed where everyone else failed. What if we can't? General O asked. Then humanity dies and some other species receives our distress call, but I don't plan on letting that happen. Kim pressed a button on the table. The holographic display changed to show a map of human space. Dozens of colonies, billions of people, all depending on the decisions made in this room. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, humanity is at war. We're going to build the largest fleet in galactic history. We're going to find the Kethvar before they reach our colonies, and we're going to make sure they never hurt anyone again. The meeting was over. The leaders of humanity left to begin the greatest mobilization in their species' history. They had 18 months to prepare for a war against an enemy that had never lost, but they had something the Kethvar's previous victims didn't have. They had a warning, they had time to prepare, and they had each other. The sleeping giant was waking up. The lights on the control panel blinked slowly in the dark room. Lee Taemin rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. on the space station New Seoul. He had been working the night shift for 6 months now, watching for signals from deep space. Most nights nothing happened. The universe was quiet and peaceful. Taemin stretched in his chair and reached for his coffee cup. It was cold, but he drank it anyway. Outside the thick windows, stars dotted the black sky like tiny diamonds. Earth was far away, just a small blue dot among millions of other lights. This was the loneliest job in the solar system, but someone had to do it. The computer made a soft beeping sound. Taman looked at his screen and frowned. A new signal was coming in from the edge of the galaxy. This was strange. No human ships were out that far. Trade routes didn't go past the Jupiter colonies. Whatever was sending this signal was not from Earth. Taman's heart started beating faster. He had trained for this moment for years, but he never thought it would really happen. First contact with aliens was supposed to be exciting, but this signal felt different. It was weak and broken, like someone calling for help from very far away. He pressed buttons on his control panel and tried to clean up the signal. The computer worked hard to remove the static and noise. Slowly, patterns began to appear on his screen. These were not random sounds from space. This was a message from someone who was trying to communicate. "Computer, wake up Captain Park," Taman said to the station's AI system. "Captain Park is sleeping." "Are you sure this is urgent?" the computer asked. "Yes, wake her up now. Tell her we have an alien signal." 5 minutes later, Captain Park Sojin ran into the control room. Her hair was messy and she was still wearing her sleeping clothes, but her eyes were wide and alert. She had been the captain of New Sol Station for 3 years. Nothing like this had ever happened before. "Show me what you found," she said, sitting down next to Taman. Taman played the signal through the speakers. Strange sounds filled the room. They were not like any language humans had ever heard. Some parts sounded musical, like singing. Other parts were harsh and sharp, like metal breaking. But underneath all the alien words, they could hear something that made their blood run cold. Fear. "This is a distress call," Park said quietly. "They're asking for help. How can you tell?" Taman asked. "Listen to the tone. I've heard enough emergency calls to know what panic sounds like. This person is terrified." Park pressed a button on her chair. "Computer, contact Admiral Kim Dong-ho at Terra Command. Priority 1. Tell him we need to speak with him right now." The main screen lit up with the face of Admiral Kim. He was an older man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago and had scars on his face to prove it. Nothing surprised him anymore, but when Park told him about the alien signal, even he looked shocked. "Are you certain this is real?" Kim asked. "Not some kind of joke or computer error?" "Sir, I've checked everything 3 times. This signal is coming from outside our galaxy. Whatever sent it is not human," Park replied. "Send me everything you have. I'm calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Keep monitoring that signal. If anything changes, contact me immediately." The screen went dark, leaving Park and Taman alone in the control room. They looked at each other with worried faces. For 200 years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was not what they had hoped for. "Should we try to answer them?" Taman asked. "Not yet. First, we need to understand what they're saying." Park called Dr. Choi Minha, the station's language expert. Minha was sleeping in her quarters, but she came to the control room as soon as she heard about the signal. She was young and excited about the chance to study the first alien language ever discovered. For the next 6 hours, Minha worked with the computer to break down the alien words. She used patterns and mathematical formulas to find meanings. It was like solving a giant puzzle with pieces scattered across the stars. "I'm getting some basic words," Minha said, pointing at symbols on her screen. "This pattern here means help or assistance. This one might mean dying or ending. And this complex section, I think it's coordinates. Star positions." As the hours passed, more of the message became clear. The aliens called themselves the Villani. Their world was being attacked by something called the Kethvar Dominion. The Kethvar were not just conquering planets. They were destroying them completely, killing every living thing. "They're sending us star charts," Minha said with excitement. "Look at this. They're showing us where their planet is and where the enemy is coming from." But then the signal started getting weaker. The Villani were running out of time. Their final message was the most frightening of all. Minha translated it with shaking hands. "Any species who receives this message, you must listen. The Kethvar do not stop. They consume everything. They are coming for you next. Please, someone must stop them before they reach your world. We are the last of our kind. Do not let them do to you what they did to us." The signal cut off suddenly. Space was quiet again. Taman, Park, and Minha sat in silence for a long time. They all understood what had just happened. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, an entire species had just died. The Villani were gone forever, and their killers were still out there. "Captain," Taman said quietly, "what do we do now?" Park stood up and looked out the window at the stars. Each tiny light might be a solar system with planets and people. How many of them would die if the Kethvar kept moving through the galaxy? Now we warn Earth, she said. Humanity needs to know that we are not alone and we are not safe. The age of peace was ending. Somewhere in the dark, humanity's first alien enemy was coming for them. The only question was whether Earth would be ready when they arrived.